Hello everybody, welcome to Coco's Crochet. I'm Litsa. Coco's having a little rest while I've come on to create a tutorial for you for our Cal 2023 stitch sampler blanket for the months of June and July. The stitches will be the puff stitch followed by the double crochet, and we will be building it on the half double crochet, which was our stitch for May. Now before we get started, please make sure that you have your stitch markers handy, a pair of scissors, and also a darning needle. So let's get started. Now I have created two versions of the example because I want to show you different ways that you need to make sure that you have the correct stitch count, which is always the most important thing when you're creating a stitch sampler blanket. And I will show you how we deal with the double crochet row to make sure that we continue with the right stitch count. So this little swatch here has 15 stitches, so let's get started. As always, chain one and turn, that is your turning chain. In this first stitch here we will create our first double crochet, and that's our little soldier standing tall on the edge, as always, to make sure that our blanket remains the right width for the entire length of the blanket. And there we go, there's our little friend, our stitch marker. So let's get on to creating puff stitches. So chain one and then you'll skip one. So you'll skip the next stitch, and into the next one you will yarn over, insert your hook, pull your yarn through, stretch your stitches up a little bit, and you'll have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over and insert into that same stitch, pull your yarn through and stretch it up a little bit, and you will have 5 loops on your hook. Yarn over, and for the last time, so your third and final time, same stitch, pull through, stretch slightly, and you will have 7 loops on your hook. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now as you yarn over again, turn your hook downwards as you gently pull through all the loops on your hook. It just makes it a little bit easier so it doesn't get stuck. Your hook, that is, through your stitches as you create your puff stitch, and then chain one, and there you have it, you've created your first puff stitch. Now let's go through that again. So skip the next stitch, and into the next one you will yarn over, so skip one, into the next one, insert your hook, yarn over, pull through and stretch slightly, you'll have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over, insert your hook into the same stitch, stretch slightly as you come up, and you'll have 5 loops on your hook. And for the third and final time, yarn over, insert into the same stitch. As you come up, stretch your stitches slightly, and you will have 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on your hook. When you yarn over, rotate your hook downwards and pull through, gently pull through all 7 loops. You've created another beautiful puff stitch, and chain one. Now let's continue making puff stitches, crocheting puff stitches to the end of our row. So skip one. Now puff stitches do take a little bit of practice, but the more practice, as always, the better we get and the faster we get. But this is not a race, we just want to create a beautiful new stitch. Oops, I've lost it. Let's start again. Now there are a variety of puff stitches out there, some with only 5 loops on your hook, some with 9, but I found that this one is somewhere in the middle, and I quite enjoy making this one. The angle that I'm trying to make it in front of the camera isn't really helping either, so apologies that it is dragging on a bit, but there it is there. Oops, Sometimes if it gets a little bit caught there, you can just fix it up so that you've got it nice and clean, and chain one. So again, skip one into the next one. Let's create a puff stitch. I like to always create a little swatch when I'm learning a new stitch. So if this is a new stitch for you, please go ahead and, you know, skip one, next one. Go ahead and, you know, play with it around for a little bit. And if you're finding that you would rather create one with 5 loops on your hook or 9, by all means, you know, do what's best for you. But at this stage, let's just say that we're working with, you see, even, there we go. Even when you've done them a few times, it gets a bit tricky. And then we're coming near the end of our chain, so skip one more. And don't get frustrated, guys, because I know when we learn something new, sometimes we think, oh, no. But it's really worth learning how to do a puff stitch. So, for example, if you ever want to create a beautiful sunflower granny square, the puff stitch will be a part of that, because I know I've used it, and at first it was very difficult. But as you create more and more, you will find that it's easier and easier. So now we've come to the end of our row, and we have 1 stitch and 2 stitch, the last one. So skip one, insert your hook into the last stitch, and create your last little double crochet, which is your little soldier standing there. Let me take my hook out so we can count. We have to make sure that we have 15 stitches, which was our foundation chain. And let me show you a couple of ways of doing that. So you can either count every double crochet and every puff stitch as 1 and the chain in between as 1, or you can count your little V stitches on top. So let's do it both ways so we can see how it works. So here we go. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So that's 15 little V's. So that's correct. Or we can count, oops, off the screen, that wasn't good. So we've got the 2 end double crochets in our puff stitches. So 1, and don't forget we have the chains in between. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Now when we create the next row, which will be all double crochets, you will see that it will open up our puff stitches and it will define them even more. So that's the beauty of having the 2 rows complementing each other for the 2 months. That's why I decided to do it this way. And when we do get to the next round, and I will show it to you again, but as you can see on top of each little puff stitch there are 2 V's. Let me separate it a bit for you. So see, there's your puff stitch and there's the 2 V's. You can decide which V you want to put your double crochet in, and either way it's going to work. Just keep it uniform across the whole row of, you know, puff stitches. Now let me get my other little swatch for you. This one only has a foundation chain of 14, and the reason why I'm going to show you this one is that we have to be quite vigilant when, you know, it doesn't always work out exactly like the other one, to make sure that our stitch count is correct. We can fudge the edges, like the ends, a little bit to make it work, because all stitch sampler blankets need a little bit of fudging sometimes to make them look beautiful, and also keep your stitch count for the, you know, the width, for the length of your blanket, which is the most important factor. So here we go. I've already started with our puff stitches and our double crochet exactly the same way as the other one. So 1 double crochet chain, puff stitch chain all the way across, and now we've come to the end of this row and we only have 1 stitch left, which means there's no stitch in between. So what will we do? What we do now is create our last double crochet, because we have to have a double crochet at each end. Let me take this out, it's a little bit tight, put that in there. Oops. So now we need to be very mindful that in this area here, even though there is a chain, we are not going to put a double crochet in there, otherwise our stitch count will be off. So let me show you. Our double crochets have to be counted, and the chain spaces in between and the puff stitches, but this is where you need to be very aware of what you're doing and counting your stitches. So let's count them together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and then 14. So when we start with our next row, our double crochets, we will not be putting a double crochet in there, because then our stitch count will be wrong. And a good guide for that will be, an easy way for you to remember as well, is, as you can see here in between, we've missed a stitch everywhere, and that's where that chain comes in. But here we haven't missed a stitch. As you can see, there is no gap, whereas here there is, and all the way across to the very start. So that's a good way for you to remember as well. So let's get started on this odd little fellow first, so that we can add our next row, and then it'll be even clearer for you. So as always, let's chain 1 and turn, because that is our turning chain. On top of our double crochet, we always create a double crochet, but in this instance we are creating double crochets for the whole row. Let's get our little stitch marker, find our little V which indicates that stitch, because there are way too many V's everywhere. Now, as we said just now, there is no gap there, so we're not going to go into the chain space, because that will put our stitch count off. So on top of our little puff stitch, we have the 2 V's. We need to decide which one to go into. I generally go in the first one, but you play around with it and see which one works best for you. So in there we will put a double crochet. So just on top, just like you would create your double crochets. So we're doing a row of double crochets now. In the chain space, you just go around the chain and create a double crochet. And this is what helps open up the puff, oops, I can't grab it, sorry. Open up the puff stitches and makes them look even more beautiful. So again, here's our puff stitch. We have the 2 V's on top. I'm going to go through the first one, only because it's my preference. If you prefer to go through the one next to it, that's okay. Just keep doing it for the entire row. Then we've come into the 1 chain space again. So we're going to go around the chain space there, create another double crochet. Again, the puff stitch on top, you'll see there are 2 V's. I'm going to go through the first one. And that's the whole thing with it, when you get to play around a little bit with the different stitches, you'll be able to, incorporate them in a lot of your makes, or if you see them in a pattern or on a, watch a YouTube tutorial, it will make more sense to you. If this is your first time, that is. If you've made them before, of course, this is nothing new to you, just maybe a refresher. So there's your puff stitch. On top, we have the 2 little V's. I'm going through the first one, and I've kept that rhythm for the whole entire row, so it just makes it look a little bit more even and a little bit prettier. Oops, my yarn has come across with me. Now let's go into that chain space, and on top of our last double crochet. Now I am going to count again, because I want to make sure that I haven't missed anything or added an extra stitch until I get my rhythm. So let's count each and every double crochet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So that is perfect. Now on our return, we're going to do exactly what we did for that row. So we're going to have our spaces as they are until we get to the end. No space, which means that it'll keep our stitch count of 14. Now let me grab our other little sample here so that we can continue with the double crochets. Now this one will be very easy because on top of every double crochet and every space we're going to put a double crochet, and as you can see the spaces are everywhere in between the stitches, so this one will be very easy to keep our stitch count. So as always, chain 1 to turn our work into that same stitch. We're going to put our first double crochet, our little soldier. On top of that little V, I will pop my stitch marker in to keep me on track with my counting, and then we have our space. So in the chain space we will loop around it and create another double crochet. There's our little puff stitch now. On top we have the 2 V's, and I'm going to go through the first one. Just preference, I've been doing it like that for a very long time. If I need to switch it up, I don't have an issue, but it's just, you know, habit, I guess. So I just continue to do that. Let me pull out some yarn. Again, here's our little puff stitch. We have the 2 V's on top. I go through the first one. So we'll continue to the end of our row just so that you can see it happening, you know, like a little visual. So here we have our chain space, so we loop around it. No need to go into that one. Again, our little V, our little puff stitch, the 2 V's on top. I go through the first one. Now, the more practice you have, like we said, the easier this will be for you. Don't be at all put off by it if you haven't tried it before. I think the puff stitch is one of the most beautiful stitches, and you know, the way I'm sitting now trying to do this tutorial, it does look a little bit awkward, but trust me, when you're sitting nice and comfortably wherever you prefer to crochet, it won't take you long at all if it's new to you. Oops, I just need a little bit more yarn. And now we're coming to the end of our row, and I will do one final count with you just to make sure that we have the right amount of stitches, because let's be real, that's what it's all about. So let's do this one more time. And again, can you see how it's opening up the stitches and just making the puff stitches even more beautiful, like they just pop. And this way, as we said, because we'll have the correct stitch count and our puff stitches are opening up, the width of our blanket will continue for the length, which will make it a beautiful blanket. So here we go, let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So that's perfect. So here we have our 2 little samples. And this is what it looks like when you have, you know, more rows. So as you're building it up, you will see how beautiful it is to look at and to feel. It's a beautiful texture. If you prefer to make your puff stitches a little bit puffier or a little bit less puffy, that's totally up to you. But I just thought I'd choose one that is somewhere in the middle. So please give it a go, see what you think. Let me know. So this is the puff stitch and double crochet being the months of June and July. So enjoy making those. I look forward to seeing your progress with your blankets. Thank you for watching as always. Hope you're all well. Take care, and I will see you again in another video. Coco says woof woof. Bye bye everybody.